Welcome back to Documentary First, an inside look at a documentary filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Jason Rugg, and joining us is our documentary filmmaker, Christian Tayler.
Hey, Jason, how are you? We are going to jump right back in with Chad and Tayler Gilchrist. It's such a pleasure and a delight to have you guys here. We want to finish hearing more about our story. So we're just completely rolling right into a new episode. So let's pick up where we left off. We were talking about working with French people that we didn't know and how we developed these relationships. You had brought up Francois and how he brought Emily and Tam into the tribe. I remember you telling me you have to talk to this guy. He's become my best friend. I just be aware he really wants to have a long conversation with you, and that could be an hour or two. Which was truly fascinating and interesting because I'd never met anybody that worked that way before. He did do a video call with me, and he really wanted to just feel us out and get to know who we were as a team, asking me things like what was my favorite French song or French movie, an American song, an American movie, just asking me random questions and just talking with me about my view of the world and life. And turns out he also was a Christian. His faith was very important to him. And he just felt very connected to us very quickly and loved our heart for the project. And it mirrored his own desire to have a different kind of working experience. And we knew that he was very high level. One of the things that he offered to bring to the team was this incredible way to record dual dialogue stuff, so that we could hear the translations, not only live, but also when we were editing, back home. And he offered to do that. I mean, did we pay him? I think we did pay them something, but not their regular rate, right? Tayler, what did you negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't remember like exact numbers, but it was a very, very significant discount that we were given from the audio house that Francois had a relationship with. So, Francois, along with providing us crew, also allowed us to kind of share in his relationship with this audio house, who did rent out the equipment that we needed for this live translation system. And so, Francois is just that kind of person who he wasn't going to come out and do the job halfway. He knew what needed to happen, and was going to make sure that we had that, and I think too, as a professional kind of in this industry, if you are going to put your name on a project, you want the outcome or the result to, be as good as it can be. So we were really grateful that he was, willing to, again, share those connections and help elevate it in that sense.
Yeah. And I think sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's totally fine. I mean, that's why you have experts like this, because my brain can't understand how a live translation system works with, someone being interviewed in English, but responding in French, and then translating that back for the interviewer in English so they know what the subject just said. I mean, it's,
very complicated.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think what we're saying as we talk around this topic is that it really does go back to who you know and letting them know you. Because I think, we did do a lot of digging around in the beginning for the equipment house. And it was, I know this company, they have a reputation. Let's try making some phone calls. And then it's who you connect with. And Tayler, what I love about you is that you are a very personable person. You are easy to talk to. You care about people. That comes across as you are working your job as a producer. And I think that does draw people to open up to you. And in doing that, you're making relationships and you're getting to know people. And I think your time spent talking to Francois, not everyone would do that. You, Tayler, that's who you are. You do that. And you made that relationship with Francois. You felt like he was right for our project, and you encouraged me to do the same. And in the end, you were right. You were 100% totally right. And you went on your gut with that, and you worked hard to nurture that relationship and to engender that love. And I think that's one of a huge strength that you carry as a producer. So if you are a producer and you're listening to this, I think that's a huge thing to emulate. And if you are looking for a producer, that quality that Tayler possesses, I think is, cannot be underrated or overrated. Can't be overrated.
Thank you. That's hard to
That's my wife.
That's hard to accept. But thank you so much. And I also will say my husband possesses that quality too. And so do you, Christian. And Jason, we know you do too. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't, sense that from you, Christian. And that initial connection that you and Chad had made. So,
let's talk about Chad for a minute. So I realized in the last episode, we totally just kind of glossed over who he was. So we haven't talked about where he came from, what his background is, what he's worked on, what he does for a job. Is cinematography the only thing he does? So Chad, take us back. How did you get interested in filmmaking in the first place?
Man. Great question. Summary of it is, I grew up with parents in different households. And so with my biological dad, we'd watch tons of movies all the time. And they were always, like James Bond and Indiana Jones and, all that kind of things. And I mean, tons of movies and including stuff from, 40s and 50s and 60s. So, and onward. So, quite a film education there. And then with my mom, it was always black and white, Humphrey Bogart, Cary Grant, Hitchcock, a lot of black and white there. So between those two, I think just at an early age, just really caught me as a way to explore and learn different things. And so wanted to do that. Ended up going to film school, went to DePaul in Chicago, down in the Loop. And from there, I was my favorite cinematographers were people that came from lighting backgrounds. So, and that seemed to be the thing that I felt, and, maybe still do. And that it's, a very difficult skill to learn and to master and to be able to control those moving parts. And, those are big crews, on a camera crew, there's maybe 4 or 5 people, and with lighting it can get exponentially larger. So that was something that I wanted to learn sooner. So I did the lighting route, and I ended up becoming like a gaffer on some like indie back of Amazon type movies and commercials and whatnot, and an electrician, a set lighting technician. And then I moved over to the union side. And then it kind of went from there. It just became, I was a grip for a while, and then went over to electric and did lighting, and yeah.
So, I think that is really interesting. I think until I started this whole thing, I really didn't understand how important lighting is. It's kind of one of those things that you take for granted. And I think early on filmmakers take sound for granted as well. And I just know that I cannot watch a film without good sound. And I certainly know if there wasn't good lighting, I wouldn't be able to watch it either, literally. So talk about the importance and how lighting can make a difference.
Well, I like to kind of point out that most people would say that like Roger Deakins is, one of the greatest cinematographers to ever have worked, and he's working right now, and he shoots all of his movies with the same camera and lenses and so you think about that, and it comes down to lighting and production design, and the quickest way to create a tone or a mood is it's lighting. And that's why you go to, some people choose restaurant A over restaurant B or bar A over bar B and hotels and whatever. Like it's all about mood and setting tones. So it's extremely important. And if you combine that as well with, composition, you can really tell stories in a single frame. So that's kind of where I wanted to jump off, and hopefully we brought some of that to this project. I know we were able to light the interviews a little bit more on this one. We did a little bit of shaping with some of our day exteriors. We're a little bit limited, but I've also been in this really unique position for the last 10 years. I've worked for like some of the greatest cinematographers working. So I've gotten to, firsthand really study what they're doing every day. I was on movies and TV shows, 14, 16, 18 hours a day, 5-6 days a week for 9-10 months straight for 5 years. And then I still was around it, day playing, still doing 40 hours a week, but not 80 or 90 on commercials and movies and things still. So I really got this great front row seat to watch the greats and hopefully learn a little bit from them and take some of that down, because sometimes you're able to learn some things that are like, what's the most efficient way to make something look better under a time crunch or a budget crunch or whatever. So we tried to bring some of those little tricks down and dirty. Like if our budget is this, what can we do within that will give us the most movement? What will allow us to elevate that image over here and here? And so some of those decisions, like the camera, that was an easy one, where it's like, I own this camera. I don't really bring it out except for friends' passion projects and whatnot. So we were able to bring the camera, and Mindy very graciously was, willing to hop on a different system. And then we were able to, that's one less thing we had to rent, one less cost on our end to hopefully put it back into the movie somewhere else. Cause it's a zero-sum game. That's the great lesson of film.
Yeah. So I know I can, everybody can go and read your IMDb, profile. And I would encourage people to do that just so you can learn a little bit more about Chad and Tayler and projects they've worked on. But can you just fill us in on some of the projects that you learned the most on, or you're the most proud of, or share with us a little bit about what you've done?
Yeah, I guess, more recently, I'm trying to think of some things that are out now.
The Bear. I know that one. You worked on The Bear.
Yes.
You worked on The Bear?
Yeah.
I love The Bear.
Oh, yeah. That was a fun one. I did the pilot on that one with Adam Newport-Berra and my good friend Brandon Hoig. So, yeah, The Bear, I did a David Fincher film in the winter of, it was last year. That's not out yet. That'll be called The Killer, which is also called like Leitura. I don't know. I can't speak French, so
That sounded good, babe.
thank you. But there's a French title as well. And then I just did Beverly Hills Cop 4 for a little bit there. I did a movie called We Grown Now that's going to come out. I'm very excited for that. I don't know. Suits, Fargo, American Crime Story.
Yeah, a lot. You
Look
got
it
a
up.
big resume.
There's some stuff on there.
Yeah. So talk to me, when you were thinking about lighting for what we were doing and our tiny little budget, what was your lighting philosophy for this?
Really, I wanted to pick fixtures, not to get too far into the weeds, but essentially I wanted to pick tools that were going to serve me in different situations and could get me out of potential trouble spots. So I was picking LED fixtures that could do full spectrum, if they needed to be daylight or tungsten, things that I could, I like to have a harder light that I can modify down to make it softer. Versus being stuck with only a soft light and needing something hard or something punchy and not being able to have it. So we picked, I mean, honestly, we didn't have many heads. I think we only had maybe 3 or 4. One of them was just like a little, 1x panel that I brought with me, a little Astra. And then we had like a couple of other lights, and they weren't like the most new recent lights. And that was another strategy for me is, sometimes you get asked to do a project and you think, okay, there's all the new fun, flashy stuff that people want to rent. And it looks cool to have behind the scenes photos of this new light if you're that DP or whatever. But we wanted to serve the story. So I can choose a light that's 10, 15 years old or whatever. And it, they can go to the back of the rental house and blow the dust off it. And I'm going to get it for a price that's significantly cheaper than the new thing. And then we're able to use that money in food or editing or, whatever else. So that was a big part for us was picking things that we thought were going to be useful in other places and economical.
Awesome. Well, it does look good. I've seen some of this footage. People were not too far away from being able to show you guys stuff. You will eventually see what they have shot. Talk to me a little bit about what you and Mindy decided about, how you wanted to shoot this, what each of your roles were going to be, and what your vision was for what you wanted this to look like.
Yeah, well, coming in, something Christian had talked about was wanting this to have a little more of a dramatic narrative feel. Just, to be able to kind of conceptualize something for another project that we're looking to do that, trying to grab some funding for. So that was definitely a big element, was how are we able to bring a little bit of these narrative elements in with also some of the more traditional documentary, an interview that's off camera or whatever. Right. So that was a big thing. And then, with Mindy, honestly, like she was so gracious and easy to work with, and something where I came in and I was like, I'll be your B camera operator. I'm here to hang out. And she very graciously kind of let me take a little bit of the lead there. And it was easy. I felt like we were always kind of on the same page, and Mindy ended up operating a camera as well. And so that was very helpful to be able to kind of approach a scene and say, hey, I'm going to go wide, you go tight, or vice versa. And figure out what we need coverage wise to make that scene work. Because, a lot of times too, just situationally, and maybe we can segue this back into you, Christian, and Tayler here. But, we ran into some interesting hurdles, which is filmmaking. That's the thing. You got to stay flexible, especially on projects that have tighter constrictions. And so we
let's talk about, I'm glad you kind of brought that up. Let's talk about some of the more notable challenges that we faced. And when we sort of talked about this podcast a little bit earlier, we talked about wanting to share the things that popped up, because just like you said, Chad, problems happen in every single production. It's like a family. There are difficult things you encounter as a family. And the question is, how do you handle those difficult things? And it's always been my vision to be able to do production differently, to take whatever comes at us and handle it in a way that gives honor and dignity to everyone, and where we can not tear each other down, but listen to each other and figure out how we can get this made in the most positive way possible. So Tayler, you were at the crux of a lot of things that you had to juggle. You were our fixer and our problem solver. So talk about some of the things that you remember that were very challenging, that you are proud of for problem solving in a positive way.
Sure. Well, I think, one of the first things that comes to mind is knowing that we were going to be filming in Normandy for 4 days, with 2 days being interviews, 2 days being reenactments of, some of these key scenes from the Battle of Carentan. Christian, you had connected me with some locals who you had already developed relationships with from The Girl Who Wore Freedom. And, these folks worked for the mayor, or they were just, locals with a lot of connections and a lot of close history in the area. And they were the ones who were helping us secure locations and secure our reenactors for the scenes that we were going to be filming. And before arriving in France, we were kind of told, everything is good in terms of locations and the reenactors. We're going to have everybody that we need for these scenes. And I don't want to say that everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but I think that everything that had been perceived as like being planned or in place maybe got flipped on its head a little bit.
Well, that's an understatement. And I will say, I'm going to put a fine point on this. I was told that the locations and the reenactors were in hand and that we really didn't need to worry about it. And as time got closer and closer, it was getting a little more nerve-wracking, and largely because you were the producer in charge and you wanted confirmation that everybody knew what they were going to do and had their call sheets, knew what time they were supposed to be there, that everybody had the, equipment they were supposed to have. And we just were not able to get any confirmations of those things. And, to explain what was going on, these people that were helping us were also in the middle of D-Day. So it is the biggest thing in their year. It's bigger than anything else in the calendar year. It's how they make their money, by being tour guides or, or whatnot. And so they are managing many different things. And typically during D-Day, the reason we chose to film during this particular time was because I was already going over there for the Girl Who Wore Freedom screenings, and the reenactors were already all going to be there. And we knew we needed to do these 5 different or I don't know how many reenactments. I think it was 5 different reenactments that we had. And so we wanted big groups of reenactors to help us out. And there was one person that did know all of these different groups of reenactors and had assured us that, don't worry about it. It's all going to be there. And in my experience, it has always been there. There wasn't really a breakdown. Everybody kind of did what they were supposed to do. And in this situation, it just wasn't buttoned up. And then we had the added problems of the weather. So talk about how we navigated this problem of not having locations really locked or having any reenactors that we were supposed to work with.
Yeah. Chad, did you want to?
Yeah, well, on my end, and we can maybe, go to the specific issues here, but, on my end, I think, early on during one of our kind of prep days, idle days, Tayler, myself, Mindy, and our awesome writer, Zach Callahan, we all did a little location scout. And, so we scouted these locations, and we had, obviously we had a writer with us. So we knew what battles were happening and how they were going on and whatnot. And so we were kind of, we were doing some previs and planning out some shots and where's the sun going to be when, and, yada, yada. And then basically on the day, it's like all these locations are either gone, or like we scouted a river and we went to this river and the water is like 10 feet lower, and 3 days later, like just crazy stuff.
There was no river when we went back.
It was just a mud pit.
A key part of the scene, because the reenactment is essentially, this group of soldiers crossing this body of water. So without a body of water, you don't really have the scene.
Right. And we have limited time with the soldiers and the light and everything. So I think there's also, which is just, and we made all of our days. And I think that's largely due to the flexibility of a really great crew that was always in problem solving mode. Everyone was contributing. There wasn't anyone that kind of took the mentality that you might on a larger production of like, okay, this is not my lane, so I'm gonna, walk away entirely and not care until it gets solved. Everyone was trying their best to help, and I know on my end it felt good maybe to do some of those years of TV, because all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm seeing the blocking for the first time right now, and we're going to have to figure out what the coverage is and how to shoot it for an edit. And the sun is setting, and we can do this like 3 times. So how can we make that happen? And Mindy too, like, oh my gosh, when we got to the river, Mindy was, and Tam being, I'll let you talk that story, but it's just lifesavers.
Yeah. I mean, really just honestly, I mean, like the problems that came up just became great adventures. And again, what Chad said about the crew that we were working with, everyone just was so fully in. It's like, here we are, we're here. We drove 4 hours from Charles de Gaulle to come up here to Normandy. We rented this equipment and we're going to do it. We're going to do it by any means necessary. And everybody shared that perspective. And so, our first day of shooting was an interview day. And again, I had been told that
I'm just now remembering how that day went.
Yeah.
For day one of production, maybe 2 hours in, 3 hours in, I look out the window and there's Tayler just a look of total dread. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Because we were
either.
supposed to have people interviewing that didn't come to the interview, and ultimately we did have to have a talk with the person that was probably overworked and didn't understand what was being expected, and to his credit, worked through that with us, and we ended up getting things done. But I give that person a lot of credit for being able to hang in there with us, to come and talk to us. And
someone that isn't a film fixer either.
Right,
so they're doing something that is totally out of their lane to the best of their ability. Yeah. And so there was...
And not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And definitely wanting to help. So, in the end, that was one of my proudest moments, that we did have this challenge with someone that we felt didn't understand the role. And yet we were able to sit down and work through it and get the job done without any animosity or, we got what we needed to get. And that some miracle. I mean, basically we had, what did we have? 8, 10 reactors it was 8 maybe that stayed with us the entire time, when we were supposed to have 50, 60.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's our first interview day. We're filming. The whole crew is, inside the interview location, and I'm communicating with our contact who's supposed to be securing all of our reenactors. And he basically is like, "Where are you? I need to come talk to you in person." So he shows up to set, and I, kind of excuse myself to go talk to him. And basically he shares the news that because of the weather that had happened, there was a huge storm. There was supposed to be, parachute drops, these amazing reenactments that had all gotten canceled, specific D-Day events that had all gotten canceled. So basically a lot of reenactors had just sort of packed up camp and left. And so basically he was like, there's no one here. And I was like, no one? There's no one. Just anybody? And again, really to his credit, he used his connections and used his relationships and got us this group of, French Klondikes. And they came and worked with us for all of our reenactment scenes the next 2 days. And again, this wasn't ideal because the different scenes were supposed to be with different soldier groups. So
let me talk about that for just 1 So when we talk about different soldier groups, so in the Battle of Carentan, you had like 301st units that helped liberate Carentan. And then you had the Fallschirmjäger German paratroopers that they were fighting against. And so really we had these group of German reenactors and then 101st reenactors, and they were all supposed to fight each other and be in these scenes together. And what we ended up with was about 8 reenactors that reenacted both groups of people, and we had to film them separately and somehow figured out
challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a logistical nightmare, particularly when they decide to kind of do their own thing in terms of reenacting on the side.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
And this was another like moment that you have no idea how to handle. But basically, we were filming a scene with just a few of the reenactors. And so the majority of them were off doing something else. And we had brought on this amazing photographer. Remember Marcio?
Oh my gosh. Marcio is
still in contact with him. He's fantastic.
Yeah, we love Marcio.
He's great cinematographer and photographer, and he loves filming reenactments. And we were told that if we brought him on, reenactors would do anything for his photos. And that was really going to be the reenactors' payment. So he was there and he was shooting pictures for these guys. So they decided to dress up as German SS to have their pictures taken as German SS. I did not know this, by the way. I was with Chad and Mindy, who were both filming a scene of the 327th with, Tech Sergeant Don Rich, who's going to take his bazooka and take Carentan. And then I hear, "You have to come. There's a problem." And I am having to go back down the road to see Tayler, who is managing a situation by giving cookies to the gendarme. And so I was like, what is happening here? So Tayler, what was happening?
Yes. So while Christian was filming, the same individual who was our contact with the reenactors had pulled me aside and he said, "The gendarme are coming," which essentially, for those listening, basically equivalent of like police, law enforcement.
Local police.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, it's because we don't have permission to film here, even though you told us that we had the permission to film here and that everything was okay with the mayor's office. That's what I thought we were going to be, running into and dealing with. And then, we walk over to the group of soldiers and, gendarme are there talking to them. And then I find out that the issue is it's illegal to be in a German SS uniform in public in France. And I imagine maybe other countries as well.
The whole EU?
Yeah. This is something
it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
A little close to home. Whoops. Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad to say the least. And, our contact is basically like, he's trying to get in contact with the mayor, to kind of.
And meanwhile, let me just say, take a pause. Meanwhile, now that you're working this out and I'm letting you work this out, I get a phone call and I'm in a van talking with a representative of the mayor's office who says to me, "This is a major mess. This is a major mess. What is happening out there? This cannot happen. You have to send an email to the gendarme and all of these other people to explain, because this is going to be bad for our film project. It's going to be bad for the town." And it was just this heightened situation because these were gendarmes that A, didn't know we were filming there, and B, and they, even though they were told, I guess, and then B, this was a big offense. Now, so I'm sitting here going, whatever we need to do, we'll do. And meanwhile, I'm also getting a call from my father, and there were major meltdowns with my dad that I was having to solve at the same time. So I'm dealing with on the upper level with, one of the Carentan official people and my father, and you're out handling the gendarme and the reenactors, trying to figure out how we move past this situation.
Well, the strategy at the time too, if you remember, was keep shooting until we get kicked out, because we're gonna get kicked out. So don't just roll on it, all of it.
Exactly.
You know, like
until we are told we have to.
I look over and I'm like, oh, Taylor's gonna buy us another 15, and by the end of 10, I look over and she's hand feeding cookies to the French police.
Well, and so really what ended up happening, is I think through explaining that, we were not aware as sort of this production that this was an issue, first off, just because, kind of playing our own ignorance of being Americans or what have you. And then also because these reenactors, some of them were a part of the gendarmes, so they knew better. They knew exactly what they were doing. And
but I think you were able to say, we are over here filming. We're filming with these reenactors. This guy is off doing his own thing on a bridge on his own.
Right.
We were
completely unrelated.
Authorizing that at all. Yeah, totally unrelated.
Exactly. Because we were never going to be filming with someone in this specific uniform. That was never part of our plan, our production. So, then the reenactor who had kind of gotten us in this situation, he felt horrible. The other thing too is they had to the gendarme had to search all of their vehicles and look through all of their weapons, which they have, these weapons as reenactors that are true to the time period.
If you're just driving down the side of the road, to paint this image, you're driving down Normandy, France, nice clear day. You look to your side and you see a little white woman feeding cookies to French police and a bunch of soldiers dressed in SS pulling out like guns, like a Russian arms deal, out of the back of this car. There's bazookas and machine guns and grenades and
This was also, mind you, right before we went to the location where we found the river dried up. So this all happened in the same
big day.
In the same day.
It was a big day.
Yeah, and we also, I remember the gendarme they were on the phone with someone who basically was kind of, it seemed like they were having a conversation with someone who was sort of giving them orders of what to do or handle the situation or how to remedy. And they handed me the phone to speak with this person as well. And when I got on the phone, it was someone that we had been working with in the production. And Christian, I don't know if you want me to drop name here. But yeah, it was Denis Vandenbrink, who was a historian that had been directing some of our reenactment scenes prior, knew who all of these guys were, knew that they had totally messed up. And he was the one who, then got on the phone with Christian and said, we're going to have to write this email, this major apology to kind of soften the situation and make sure all of our relationships are still intact. So it was definitely it was a highlight, I'll say, honestly, ultimately, because
it was big day. And then 30 minutes later, 40 minutes later, we're at a location that's like there's no water.
Yeah.
And then maybe 40 minutes after that, an hour,
we're at a new
river.
Mm-hmm.
I am in waders in water up to my chest, holding my camera.
As is Mindy.
Yeah,
and Mindy is holding on to me, and we're sinking slowly into mud that is like almost up to my knees.
Yeah.
And every time you try to walk, you're going to fall. I mean, and these reenactors, though, they were awesome. We were doing this big scene. They get in the water. They chase, they kind of chase through this water. And also the mud this river is next to, it's next to like kind of like a dairy farm.
Cow pasture?
A cow pasture, yeah. So
how'd it smell?
Not like mud.
Yeah.
So we're in mud up to our chest, and
I mean, it was amazing. Yeah, no, honestly, it was amazing because again, it just was here was another example of everybody just going fully in and quite literally fully in, submerged in cold French water. And these, I mean, really by this time too, this was the last.
That was our martini shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was our last scene that we filmed. And so by this time, again, we'd been working with these same like 8 reenactors. We had experienced problems with the law. Like we were really, again, for lack of a better term, a family at this point. And also I remember an amazing visual of filming this scene as well is Emily with the boom pole, just like she's kind of in the middle of this swamp area, and she's so small. She's so petite. She's the most petite
like 5 foot
boom operator ever. So it's just, gosh, she's so great.
And she's got a boom pole that's 20 feet long over the river.
Yeah,
is that Francois believed in her.
Yeah,
he believed in her, wanted to give her an opportunity, knew she could do this.
Yeah.
She was willing to take that opportunity. She wasn't expecting to get paid at all. She went out there, worked her tail off.
Yeah.
We couldn't let her get away without paying her something. She just did such an incredible job. And I think you're right, Taylor. I think it goes to the heart of the project. And like everybody here really did share a passion for doing something really well. And working together, having the same mindset of how to work together as a team. Yeah. And I remember that same evening, that shot of Emily, the one that sticks in my mind is all of the reenactors did not want to get out of the river.
Yeah.
They wanted to go again. And we're like, guys,
they wanted to swim. They wanted to go, they were just having such an amazing time. And after all of that had happened, it still was a beautiful way, I think, to wrap our shoot. And, yes, we didn't even touch on the fact, like we had booked a lodging and.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, really, like, seriously, like the social political kind of things that you run into when filming internationally.
And when you're balling on a budget.
Yeah. It's.
Talk about the lodging experience.
So. Right. We all, as a crew, were staying in this, a manoir is what it's called. And it's basically
castle,
like a castle kind of farmhouse property. And the owners of the property, they lived in kind of on the separate side of the house. And it's just, it's a really cool, like old French property, probably like built in the, 1800s. It's
no,
old.
It's earlier than that. Like seriously, things over there are like over 1,000 years old.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, and it's large. It is, and it's there are multiple buildings on the property. Like there are ducks walking around.
Animals. It's freely roaming. It's very provincial. It's very provincial. And our hosts, we were told before we even got there that they were
anti-American.
Yeah, they weren't huge fans of Americans, and they were kind of showing that in some of the correspondences we had before arriving, just kind of some like inflexibility with changing dates or guests that we were going to be bringing on our end.
And I do want to quickly interject and just say that I didn't find this attitude to be the case with anyone else that I met in Normandy the entire time. Everybody else was very pro-American, very, very like they wanted to hear your stories. They wanted to hear how, what family member you're related to that fought in World War II. There is a lot of love for Americans. And I think most people on this podcast, I'm sure, know that because they've seen The Girl Who Wore Freedom, which is available to rent and purchase now at online anywhere. So make sure you pick that up. Great.
As well as thegirlwhowwarefreedom.com. You can go to our website and that money goes straight to us.
Absolutely. Buy it from the website. Great stocking stuffer. Sorry, continue, Taylor.
Yeah. So, we knew that we weren't totally coming into a lodging that was like really excited to have us. So fast forward, Christian's son Jonah was with us, and he also had some of his friends who were there who are
jumping.
Yeah,
they were jumping. They were with the army. And let me just, before we go on, even before the whole Jonah thing happened.
Yeah.
The wife was really nice to us,
yes.
but there was a husband that basically did not want to talk to us at all. And he would sit in the middle of the room watching television and was very angry anytime you tried to talk to him. So it was very confusing. And we had a lot of people in this house, and we had people coming and going at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a lot to manage, and I think was difficult for them, especially for him. And at one of these times, Jonah came, he was one of the later arrivals. And then his friends, who were guys who were actually jumping, needed a place to stay, apparently.
Exactly. And we had the space at the time because we were waiting for certain crew members to arrive. We hadn't started production yet, so we had open beds. And, again, here are these, just sweet. I mean, Jonah's friends were
they're so kind.
They were
so
wonderful. Kind. And so they only stayed for one night. And I had said to Jonah, I said, okay, if they stay, you just need to ask our hosts for a change of sheets so you can turn over the beds before our crew comes. And I said, Jonah, use Google Translate. I trust you. I know that you can communicate with them in French. We're literally just asking for a change of sheets. So Jonah's like, okay, I got it. Jonah thinks he has it. Then he comes back outside and he's like, Tayler, I don't think he's understanding what I'm saying. Can you come and try to translate? And I do speak French. I by no means will claim that I'm like,
She speaks French.
I can get a point across, I think. I can get a point across. And so then I go in to try to figure out what's going on. And basically the husband is very upset by this request for a change of sheets on, I think, literally 2 beds, maybe. And, it turns into this like, oh, you Americans, like, you're always, making things difficult. And this is not, what you had signed up for in your reservation. And, you're being so disrespectful. I can't believe it. And like, mind you, also, this conversation, whole interaction was happening on D-Day. This was like the anniversary.
June 6th.
Oh, wow.
And we're having this conversation. He is, directing these expletives to an
American
soldier.
service
wearing
members.
uniform.
In uniform.
Yes. Jonah was in uniform during this whole...
Enjoy your freedom. You're welcome. We just want 2 sheets. 2 sheets.
Yeah. And
But the worst part for me was I heard him screaming his head off and slamming the door. And that was at you.
It was at my wife. And you know what? Honestly, we can all be thankful that I don't know French. Because we probably would have got kicked out.
Yeah, it basically had ended, I mean, ultimately, I think he did agree to like giving us new sets of sheets but slammed the door in my face.
But, shout out to Francois, who's, a true gentleman and a statesman.
He wasn't there at the time.
He wasn't there.
That was what was interesting. He wasn't there at the day. Francois wasn't there. And neither was Emily or Tam, who both spoke French.
Mm-hmm.
And Denis Vandenbrink wasn't there. He was staying there as well. The next day they show up and all of a sudden there's a huge change.
Yep.
Right?
Because now we have our French allies are on the scene and
well, Francois,
the whole attitude changes. And Francois
he called them out as well.
He had a separate conversation with the owner.
And he did say, like, these are men in uniform here to celebrate liberating our country, and you're being completely rude to them, totally called them out. And a very honestly, I mean, it seemed like a nice way. Whatever he said, however he said it with a smile, and the gentleman was receptive. And from there on out, it's like, oh, Jonah, you're having a hard time with your car? We'll help you out.
Yeah.
You know, like they're out and in hands and knees trying to, lift Jonah's car who is stuck in the mud or whatever.
Yeah.
So like very interesting experience.
Yeah. A total turn of events.
Total 180. Also, I think he might have gotten a little heat from his wife, and that was amusing.
Yes. I mean, again, just fascinating experiences culturally too to have.
Yeah, we have so many stories, and it was such a blast. We went to be on the beach, on D-Day. Was I really think really life changing, and I think that is at the end of all of this, we have these fun stories, and we could talk about the ups and downs of production, but truly it's a life changing trip. To be able to go and do this while veterans are still alive, and to be with to be at Breakware Manor and to be there with Dick Winter's nephew, who's also served in Vietnam, and all these just really crazy things. To hear these stories of these brave individuals is really what it's all about, and why we did all this, why we do all this work. And so I want to special thanks to you, Christian, for inviting us and for letting us come and help tell this story with you, and Jason, for you as well, for being faithful to this podcast. And I'm sure it's not getting live feedback all the time is like, oh man, the dread, why do I do this or whatever. Who knows, on whatever early morning or late night, you put in the extra work, but we don't do this for us. We do this to share this important piece of history to the future. And I think we see that more and more, that it's important that these stories are told. And so make sure that you go watch The Girl Who Wore Freedom, so that you can hear.
I love you, Chad. You're hired forever.
Love you.
But I do think, and I think you're wrapping it up so nicely. One of the things that just gave me such soul satisfaction was the night that we wrapped. We all stayed up probably till 1 or 2 in the morning, just debriefing. And everybody went around the table with a bottle of Calvados and talked about each other, and what each person had done and brought to the table. And, just how we saw the amazing in the others we were working with. And Rick Arbazani, who is become such a dear friend, who's, kind of what you call
Papa Rick.
Yes, Papa Rick. He's been on so many different sets working, so many different films. And him saying that this was the best crew experience he had ever had, I will hold on to forever, because for all of the problems that we experienced, it did not divide us as a team. And everybody, I think, shone, during that time. One of the things that I loved is at some point, Chad came up to me and said, "Hey, Christian, this is putting a lot of pressure on Tayler. And I know it's not intentional, but it's really it's really stressful on her." And I was so thankful for that. Because you can't fix a problem as a director or a producer unless it's brought to you, in some sort of way. And typically on other production sets, that wouldn't have been done. It would have just been, this woman's a biatch and we're done with her. We're never working on this film thing again. Right. But I think everybody was committed there to really communicating well and working together well. And, that to me is the most rewarding part so far of this production. Getting to know you guys and working with you, the way you work with the rest of the team. You have my undying gratitude, and I can't wait to work with you more. So, and as far as Jason goes, I've known Jason since he was about 16 years old, and we've been through a lot together over the course of time. And, you have always been here for me and believed in me, Jason. And I'm just so grateful for your friendship and, your commitment of time to what I'm doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's good to, I mean, Christian and I, we've always just had each other's back in everything we've always been through, and it's cool to, I'm just glad that every time that she adds someone new to the team, and it's good people like both of you two. It's just like good people who clearly have her back, believe in her, believe in the project, believe in what she's doing. I'm just over the moon every time. So yeah, I'm
glad they could finally meet you guys. And
yeah, I can't believe it took this long. I've been hearing about you two for.
Yeah.
Well, they're busy people. They work. And fair. By the way, they're going to be quite busier right around March. So why don't you talk to us about what's coming next?
Well, we have a couple of commercials.
A baby boy.
A baby boy.
Oh, wow.
Tayler 2.0.
It's so exciting. Yeah. Shortly after they wrapped, they spent a night in Paris or a day in Paris, flew home, and I think got married like the following weekend. Wasn't that?
Yeah. It was like 12 days later. And Christian and her husband came to our wedding, which was so amazing. Yeah.
It really was the best wedding I've ever been to, I think, including all of mine. I mean,
I think you were the first one that really learned outside of our immediate family that we're having a baby too.
Oh yeah, that's true. You were one of the first people we told.
Yeah.
Wow. So, super fun.
There you go. All it takes.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you. That's awesome. And thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You know what we forgot to do?
DocuView.
It's time for DocuView Déjà Vu.
DocuView Déjà Vu. I wasn't going to let you forget.
All right, Chad, I want you to go first this time.
Okay, I will start it off with The Dissident. I'm going to hold up the image. If you're listening on Spotify or, if you're audio only, you're not going to see this. But if you're watching on YouTube, Dissident, that's the name of the film right there. It's, I'll read you the synopsis. When Washington Post journalist
Jamal Khashoggi
disappears in Istanbul, his fiance and dissidents around the world piece together clues to a murder and expose a global cover-up. So really awesome and I think important documentary. Definitely one that's, it's always fascinating to me when people put themselves in a lot of dangerous position to advance humanity, and maybe that's a theme here with World War II as well here. But fascinating, amazing storytelling, and technically brilliant, and one of those stories that just keeps unfolding, and all of a sudden you're caught up in it. So highly recommend it, and that is available on Plex. I don't know what Plex is, but it's on Plex and Tubi and Prime, and you could probably buy it wherever else you buy movies.
Awesome. All right. Last night, yes. What'd you say, Jason?
I was going to say, the thing that's shocking to me is I looked this movie up, and the fourth person listed in the cast is Jeff Bezos.
Jeffrey Bezos.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned because there's this massive cover up and everything.
Yes, he's kind of looped in. It's great. Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Watch to find out.
Even more intrigued.
Okay, so mine is a documentary that Chad and I actually watched, and Tayler started with us watching last night until she fell asleep, 5 minutes in.
It's only because it wasn't before 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, this was really an amazing documentary. I learned a lot. It's Louis Armstrong's Black and Blue, a fitting tribute to a titan of American music. Louis Armstrong's Black and Blue honors its subject by letting him tell his story in his own words. This has 100% tomato meter, 90% audience score. It can be watched on Apple TV. Incidentally, it is produced also by Sarah Bernstein from Imagine Entertainment. And this movie was really, really fascinating to me because he had recorded on reel-to-reel audio tapes all throughout his career. Just stories, his own history, meetings with other people. And so the majority of this film is in his own words, but of course it's only audio. So they had to figure out what to do to tell the story visually. And I'm not going to ruin it, but I thought it was brilliant. So I definitely think it's worth watching, particularly if you like Louis Armstrong. It gives you a lot of a background history. But as I found out on Wikipedia, probably only a quarter of his life history. So if you're really interested, you'll need to do a little bit more research to find out some of the more interesting things about Louis Armstrong. So that's my recommendation today.
Well, all right. I think we're about wrapped up here. I hope that we have you two back on when I'm a little bit more awake, because I would love to talk to both of you a little bit more about what you do. And yeah, I think we should definitely have these two back on, don't you think, Christian?
I absolutely think so. And hopefully if we can just get them to maybe during December in the downtime, we can get them back on because there's still like so much more we haven't talked about.
It would be an honor. It would
be. Thank you.
All right. Thank you both for being here, and thank everyone for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it.
Yes, you can. Bye, everybody.
Bye.